And we're back, Stripe Show podcast on a Tuesday. I'm your host, Travis Fulton. Thank you for making us part of your day. Today's podcast brought to you by, I should say, About Golf Simulators. You can see the beautiful About Golf Simulator in the backdrop here as we continue to put the studio together, one piece at a time. I've got refrigerators, cabinets, all over the place in boxes here as they're going to be building the new set/bar here over the next couple weeks. So I'm excited about that. Hopefully everybody had a great Memorial Day weekend. Sorry that we were not on the air on a Monday with the family at Amelia Island. Played this little course called Little Sandy. It was phenomenal. 10 par threes, quite the experience. So that was fun. And of course, thank you to all of the, for those men and women that have served this great country, giving us our freedom as we now look ahead to the memorial. Oh, almost forgot. Sam Burns. You know, he's an automatic bet here on the Stripe Show podcast. So guess who got his fourth win on Sam Burns? Right here, 28-1. My boy, Sam Burns, does it again. And he's in the field. As we look ahead, well, no, he's not in the field this week. I don't think Sam Burns is in the field this week. I will get to it here in a second. Joining me, a new guest here on Tuesday. He's a sports betting manager at Bet Sports. Ryan Noonan, how you doing?
I'm good, Travis. I love that you're a Sam Burns guy because he is he's a guy that I think it's really important. Like sometimes you see a skill set and you anchor to it. And then sometimes it can cost you a little bit of money until they get there. But that happened to me a couple of years ago with Sam Burns. He was just an auto bet for me, and he finally started to pay off. So good to see him continuing to find the winner's circle. We're on the upside with Sam Burns. You know, he's we've been touting Sam Burns a long time. When he turned professional, I know his coach very well, Brad Poland, and he's done a terrific job with him. And I just look at Sam. I'm like, look, this kid has the modern game. I mean, he's longer than average off the tee. He's a great iron player. And when he makes putts at +4 and +5 strokes gained putting. So like, to me, that's the recipe. You can overlook deficiencies around the short game in today's PGA Tour. Sam's not a great short game player, but his irons are so good. And when he putts well, like he did last week, +5, like he did at Valspar, +5.2, he's got win equity. He's not afraid to win. Sign me up. So yeah, big Sam Burns fan. And 65 on Sunday, the field came back to them, and sometimes you win like this. But let me ask you this, Ryan, before we get into Memorial. I mean, this is back-to-back weeks, 7 shots back to come back to win. Wow. You got to watch on Sundays now all the way through because you just never know what's going to happen. I think there's a good lesson in there. I don't want to be too reactive to the two events that we saw, but I think that oftentimes, especially when you have someone like Scotty at the top, who is basically even odds, and we obviously know what Scotty's done on this calendar year so far, just to not lay that much juice on the favorite. Just try, if you're looking to get down on live stuff on a Sunday or even on a Saturday, look for if there's a tee time advantage, because that course played significantly different. And I was actually a little worried about that for Sam when he came back out, because the course in the afternoon for the playoff was very different than what he finished in and got in the clubhouse in. So look for those opportunities where you can get down the board a little bit. Guys like Sam that have legit win equity if something were to happen and the field kind of collapses, instead of laying even odds, or you're laying juice on Scotty at that time. So, look to get back into the live betting board with guys who can win and can prove themselves and, can get you some plus money and make it worth it. There are 125s, Travis, on Sam on Sunday morning. I mean, that's incredible.
Wow. That is incredible. That golf course just continues to impress. Colonial, all this distance debate stuff. And here's Colonial, 7,050 yards. It's amazing. That rough is just really unusual. I was talking with Tim Tucker, who was on the bag for Adam Svensson. He was talking about how it was a little damp early and the ball was coming off a little sluggish. You don't get those hot flyers as much as when you do when that Bermuda dries out. And he says, it can be upwards in that 20-yard range of having to manage how that ball is going to come off the face. And of course, you put a little wind on that golf course, smaller greens, and it just plays tough. And yet you have these players showing up. And I know I'm talking to some of them. They're like, man, I go out there, I play this course. I feel like I should shoot 66 in my sleep. And somehow I shot 72.
Yeah.
So it stood the test of time. It's a little quirky, but it's a good spot. It's still a really good spot. Now they have to come over here to the Memorial, Muirfield Village, beautiful place. We know that, star-studded field. I can't believe Sam Burns is not here. I just assume he would be here, but Sam Burns is not here, so we'll have to figure out someone else to bet. And now they go to this rough where it's that, gnarly kind of rough. It's penal, but they get a little more of a cush here. The collection areas there's not a lot that are kind of, shaved down collection areas that we've seen in the past few weeks. These will be in the rough. So they got to really throw the ball up in the air. They've got to use trajectory and less spin around the greens. And it's just another test. When you look at this golf course, Muirfield, what are some things that you're looking at that are important to you to find a winner or a sleeper this week?
Yeah, I think you made some good points there too. I think we need we have big old fairways, right? You can land a plane on some of these things. They're pretty wide, but at the same time, you have some really very difficult par fours. So you have to have guys that can really score on par fives. That isn't necessarily going to be there in two. You see a lot of guys, and you kind of look at winners in the past. And we've had a couple of outliers back in like the Lingmerth, middle of the 2015s or so.
Dirt McGirt,
right? Otherwise, it's a pretty star-studded, at least where those guys were at the time. It's pretty much top of the board winners.
Mm-hmm.
It does play itself out similar to a major. So I want guys that can avoid bogeys. I want some solid par four scoring, kind of manage those, see if you can actually get your scoring done on the par fives. We have a pretty sizable bucket of approach shots from 175 to 200. So I'm looking at, pretty good proximity scoring from that range. And like you said, we've had so many variations of around the green over the last few weeks. And this week is going to be different. It's going to play more of that traditional thicker around the green, not those runoffs, because these are really small greens. I believe they're like seventh smallest on the tour. So that can be challenging too, especially when you're coming from the rough. So guys that can manage those par fours, take advantage of those par fives, avoid those big blow up numbers that can come from missing the fairway. But again, it's just tee to green, right? It is, like we say that every week, but like this is one of those places when you just look historically what those guys are ranking in the top 10 here at the end of the week, they are dominant tee to green.
Yeah, strokes gained tee to green. That's going to be a big statistic here. And when you think of strokes gained tee to green, well, you think of Jon Rahm, although this is a different Jon Rahm this year than we saw last year. And right now, as we come on, he is the favorite. As I look at DraftKings Sportsbook, he is the favorite at 8-1. There's got to be a little bit of sting in there still yet. I mean, this is a year away now. He comes walking off the green after Saturday, and they're like, "Hey, John, come here, man. I got to tell you something. You tested positive for COVID, and you can't play on Sunday." And he had a 6-shot lead. He's got to, come on. He's got to have a little bit of fire, doesn't he, in his belly coming into this week?
You would expect. I mean, and how could you not? He handled that really well. I think we would have seen that go very differently maybe 2-3 years prior with the way that Rahm would sometimes show himself on the course, which is okay too. Like at the end of the day, anyone that's, and I know that golf is a gentleman's game and all. If you're competitive in any sport at any time, like I just never bothered me that someone got really heated when something went wrong. Like he wasn't threatening other players or like he's not throwing clubs per se. I don't mind that he plays and shows a little bit of emotions on his sleeve. The thing that I'm interested to hear, Travis, to get your opinion on is a lot's been made of the putting, because when you look at tee to green, he's still Jon Rahm. He still checks all the boxes. He's elite in any 24 rounds, 50 rounds, 100 rounds. You're still going to find Jon Rahm at or near the top of the board. The around the green stuff has been a challenge for him this year, which has been interesting. It's not necessarily been a problem for him historically. But when you look over the last little bit, that's kind of been the problem. If you look over the last 3 months, first off the tee, he's actually 16 tee to green, but a big part of that, he's 76th around the green. And we were talking before we got on about how around the green can be a little noisy because of the variations of it. Do you think that there's something there? Do you think that there's, this could be an easy fix for him? Because that's been a little bit of a problem for him. Again, just the short game is off, not just on the putting side, but he's not been leaving himself those close birdie putts or close tap-ins for par.
Yeah, I think it's a valid question. And when I see a player have the slump with the putter, I don't get too worried, right? Because we know that, look, you play golf long enough, you're going to have stretches where the ball's just not going in the damn hole. and it's frustrating and you have to keep playing. So like I look at Jon Rahm and some of the struggles with the putter. I'm like, all right, like it's going to turn around. And I feel like, I said it many, many times on air over the last month and a half. I was like, when that putter turns around, watch out because Jon Rahm's coming. Now in Mexico, he went up and kind of beat up on a weak field.
Yeah.
But he got the win nonetheless. But the short game is more concerning to me, at least, when you start seeing a player like a Jon Rahm who's having a hard time with the short game. And he's hitting some weird shots that are just like, what just happened there? Like, why did that happen? So clearly, now he pitched the ball better at the Mexico Open. He was positive too. Then he comes back at the PGA and not as clean again, back to -2.5. His approach game wasn't that good. He made the cut, finished 48. So I'm still a little worried about Jon Rahm with the short game, probably more so than I am the putting. Perhaps the putter, sometimes you'll see some frustration leak into other parts of the game.
Yeah.
We saw that with Spieth. We've seen it with Ricky Fowler, where all of a sudden it's like, man, I'm working on this part of my game in the full swing. And then all of a sudden you lose the strength, which was Ricky Fowler's putting, which was Jordan Spieth's putter. So it takes a while to get back to that. I think he'll work through it, but my point going into this week, I don't think it's the same Jon Rahm right now at 8-1.
That's the problem, Travis. We're not getting a discount to find out.
No, we're not.
So that's, I would love to be able to be on the right side and just say, listen, long term, this is a guy that I believe is, excuse me, is going to figure it out. But like, we're paying the top of the board, and if he was sliding back a little bit, even into say the Cantley range, or there's some lower numbers on Xander, that would make a little bit more sense. But we're paying the premium price for him, because I think a lot of people want to buy into that narrative of that slight revenge factor against the course, I guess, and against what happened to him here last year. So I'm cheering for him because I love when he's on. He's incredible to watch, but not at 8-1.
Yeah, not at 8-1. And then you go to 10-1 at Patrick, who of course ended up winning after John. And I think with Patrick, there's some rough waters right now. It's not so much with the short game. It's more with the approach game. I thought at RBC, he hit the ball much better, finished second. Then he goes to the PGA Championship and misses the cut. I don't think Patrick Cantlay is exactly on full form right now as well. So when I look at Rahm and Cantlay on top, I'm kind of, I think I'm going to pass. And then we continue down to McIlroy at 11, Schauffele at 16, Morikawa at 18. I tried to jumpstart the train a little bit last week with Morikawa to no avail. Mm-hmm. And then Hovland at 21. And you would think, as good as the ball striker that he is, perhaps he would have a bigger win than he does. Now I know he's got 3 wins, but all kind of, that second tier type tournament. Hovland's looking for that win with a good field. Now, historically, Ryan, this tournament has done that. Cantlay kind of put away his first big field here. So maybe Hovland, there's some juice there where he can come in and get his first really big win against a great field. But I look up top there, nothing really is like hitting me in the face saying, I'm going to bet that.
Yeah, I'm the same. Actually, I started my card a little bit down the board from where we are now. You can sell me on any of these guys, and that makes sense every week, right? They are literally the top of the board for a reason. The Cantlay stuff, I was with you. I thought maybe we saw a turnaround with how he played at RBC and how he played at Zurich, and then just absolutely couldn't get it going with the irons at Southern Hills. So disappointing there. There's some talk about Colin's small course history between the workday and what he's done here at the Memorial around like the power fade, and Jack had a power fade and his design is to play that way, and that is Colin's game. It hasn't been great. He hasn't been. Still Colin Morikawa, so like his baseline from an approach standpoint is still significantly above field average, but he hasn't been just this electric dynamic. Even like a guy like Zalatoris, who's a little bit further down the board, like he's been lacking a little bit there, and we know the short game struggles with Morikawa too. Mm-hmm. Who definitely profiles like Sam Burns, right? We don't need him to like putt well all the time, but sometimes Morikawa has these spiked weeks putting wise. And then if he's himself tee to green, he's going to win basically. Him and like JT, I always feel like, man, they have spiked putting weeks. They are going to win the event. So I'm with you. Like there's reasons you can justify any of them, but none of them jump out as like, man, I can't miss on that guy this week.
Right. Yeah, you're just not too excited. I mean, and the other thing too, and I talked about this last week, like Morikawa, Hovland, like these guys aren't playing. So I kind of give them the benefit of the doubt too. They've only played 4 times in the last 2 months, you know, because they've got a big summer coming up, and, you know, obviously the race at the end with the FedEx Cup and all that. So, gosh, but Morikawa does feel like he's slipping a little bit with the flat stick. I mean, it has not been good, but it can wake up in a hurry. Yeah. And when it wakes up, we know where he goes from there. It's interesting. Morikawa kind of fits that mold to some degree, right? Like we were talking about earlier, like great iron player, a little clunky around the greens, but he has his great putting weeks. And when he has his great putting weeks, he wins. And it's kind of what the tour is. And Sam Burns, you know, kind of fits into that mold as well. I'm waiting on Hovland. I'm waiting on Victor. I don't know if this is the place for him to put a good field away. I do think he's going to have to lean on that short game. I do think that Kush will help Victor, though. When you start talking about the different types of short game shots, I feel like the situations around these greens will be better for him based off his technique and what he's trying to do versus those tighter types of lies that you'll see at other venues. So I tend to kind of go that way a little bit more with Victor this week. And I think probably by the time they tee it up, I will have probably sprinkled a little bit on Vic up top here. And if I had to go a second, I think I would go McIlroy. I just can't get myself to play Xander to win anymore. I'm kind of at that point where I've just lost faith in Xander putting tournaments away. Am I wrong?
No, I don't. So that's the problem is, like, you know, he is that caliber of player, right? Because he's always around. He is just an automatic top 20, it feels. And that's kind of actually been his draw here. He has 4 straight, I think, T18s or better. I don't think he's really ever tasted any Sunday smoke. Like, he's not really ever in it. Sometimes those are going to be back doors. Yep. But gosh, I mean, when you run any statistical modeling this week, he's like popping at the very, very top because he checks all the boxes. He's obviously incredible from this range. He is great on this putting surface. He has no real falls in his short game. Everything is really nice for Xander. Yeah, where do I have him? He's incredible off the tee. We're going to have a lot of sand here. I think that can be pretty noisy statistically. I don't give it a lot of weight very often, but he's, top 5 in sand saves over the last 50 rounds in this field. So, there's just no holes in the game. But again, like, there is something to be said that we can't put into a model around what happens on Sunday when it's close. And he's not really ever there very often for an elite player. Like, we don't really have a lot of Xander in the final group, or Xander's in the mix and he's at the top of the board come Sunday morning before things get started. So he's probably more safe for me for a top 20 play than, even at shorter odds, than really laying, whatever 17, 18 on him to win.
Yeah. It's, gosh, with Xander, it's, I hate to say this, I'm not trying to be a jerk, but it's like, I feel like he's the most overrated, great skill set player that we have in the game. And he gets a lot of praise from his colleagues, and how great of a player he is. And I know he's won 4 times, I believe. Yeah, I think he's won 4 times. And, it's weird to say he's won 4 times in the PGA Tour, but when you compare it to what his skill set is in his statistics, it's like, this is a dude that should have won 7, 8, 9 times. I know it's hard to win on the PGA Tour. I get that.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It just doesn't add up for me. And I always tend to kind of just brush by. Now, if Xander was staring at me at 35-1, that's a different conversation.
Totally agree. It's a great point, though. These things matter because I think it's important for listeners to know, and then people do it differently, but there's a reason you can't just fire off, or you probably shouldn't just fire off multiple plays at the top of the board. The way that I structure outrights is basically to win X amount, and I'm trying to structure it that way. So I'm trying to get to that dollar amount to win. That makes it very expensive to then bet 3 guys that are at the top of the board at 25 or under. So, it just is really hard to justify that. So him winning at Zurich and winning the Olympics is the most Xander thing ever, because they almost don't count. And that's that could not be more prototypical Xander, because there's no real major field events and, a team events. It's gosh, it's like you totally said, the skill set's there. It's hard to argue with the skills.
Yeah, I totally agree. Tour championship. I mean, it's a tour championship, but it's 30 players.
Correct.
All right.
Yeah.
So, Rory, we'll move on here to the next tier, but I think I could go with Rory a little bit. I think his iron game is really coming on. I think his putting is always kind of Rory-esque, like a little better than what he's getting credit for. So I'll probably go Hovland a little bit up top, trying to push him across the finish line with a big win. But I may just do a little Rory as well. But as we work down now, there's Shane Lowry at 20. There's Cameron Smith at 22. There's Jordan Spieth at 22, who hasn't had a ton of success here. There's Matthew Fitzpatrick, who's, speaking of skill sets, would have to be top 3 right now, I would think, this year in the world at 25, although he doesn't have that win on US soil to go with it. Matsuyama at 28. And then we'll stop at Willie Z at 30. And you think about, gosh, this could be a really good spot for Willie Z, couldn't it?
Travis, I don't know about you. I think every spot is a good spot for Willie Z. I have such a hard time not betting him. It's only Tuesday. I have 48 hours before it starts off, and I don't have Willie on my card yet, and I already have like FOMO. I could still bet him if I want to. So like I don't know. Like I want to kind of, like we talked about with Sammy Burns. Like this is just a player that I want to be long on. I think that there's the game is the most predictable parts of the game. The iron play, the ball striking, he is absolutely elite in. I don't care that he's 25 or he's barely a year on tour, and I'll continue to fire at him in big field major events, and I don't care that he hasn't won Detroit or the John Deere. Like it doesn't. I know that this kid can go out and win, and obviously a lot of people. First of all, the networks need to stop like zooming in on Willie putting. I don't need to see his putter, just his putter. It's not fair to him within 5 feet. Zoom outs. But even like he seems like a really good lag putter. Like he from distance, he seems really solid. I think he's just not super confident, super close. But I think again, young kid, the skill set is predictable. I will probably bet on him. Because I will have massive FOMO to not have him. But I took 2 shots, the guys that you mentioned, a couple Euros that have both been playing really well. I took Lowry, and I already bet on Matthew Fitzpatrick as well.
Yeah.
I just love their fits for this place.
Yeah, I'll go. Yeah, I agree. I like Fitzpatrick a lot in this middle group. God, it feels like he's going to put one of these away soon. Cameron Smith has not played good here at all. This has not been a good spot for him. Certainly off the tee. I mean, it's not like really tight, but yeah, that driver's probably put him in a little bit of trouble here with Cameron Smith. I said Spieth hasn't had a great deal of success. I mean, okay, right? He's been in the top 20 here. Willie Z, it's interesting. I talked to his coach, Josh Gregory, at length this morning before we jumped on. And Willie Z's ball striking speaks for itself. We all know that. His iron game is ridiculous. I think his short game is fine. Mm-hmm. I think his putter is getting better and better. I've been one that's been kind of saying, look, I get it. Inside 5 feet, the anxiety hits. You see the putter head do its thing. And it's really unfortunate. And you hope that he can continue to overcome that. Outside of that, it's really good. I thought it was the best he putted I've ever seen him putt at PGA. Josh thought there was a couple other events where he putted better. But nonetheless, it's getting better. And Will is really becoming more confident over and over as he continues to put himself in the hunt. He made the big putt to get into the playoff. That was a huge moment for him. Mm-hmm. So I think it is getting better. And I think he will put one of these away here really, really soon. And I'm with you. I will probably be on Will at 30-1 because you just feel like it's coming, right? I mean, if you had to pick who gets it first, Fitzpatrick or Will, I think it's Will. I think it's Will on that one.
I think that's fair. Because the thing with Will too is like once he gets it, the 30s are gone, Travis. We won't see him ever again.
Right.
He'll open like that's Xander. True. He'll open in the high teens. He'll open at 20. And then we'll have to make the decisions of like, okay, is like we get to Morikawa at times. Like, is Morikawa an auto bet at 20 or above? That's what's going to happen with Zalatoris. We'll stop seeing the 30s because when he's going to win, he'll probably win one of these events. He's going to win a strong field event because he's that caliber of player. So I like to see that too. I like how his composure on the weekend at Southern Hills, I thought was impressive to watch with, the weather getting wonky and the putting. Again, like you look over the last couple months, losing strokes, but like losing less and less every week. And again, like we have to give credit for those gains, and we don't need him to be an above average putter because the ball striking is so far above, a tour average player, and even a lot of these guys at the top of the board. So yeah, I mean, it's just a guy I want to continue to buy in on.
It's incremental gains, right? It's incremental gains, and that's what it is. And what you're seeing is, I hope that little weird inside reroute goes away and that anxiety calms down, because that's all it is from inside, 4 or 5 feet. He doesn't do it on the longer putts. He doesn't do it on the putting green at all. His stroke is mint when you look at it outside of that. So hopefully he can work through that. If he does, and the anxiety just continues to suppress, watch out, because if he's positive 0.5 putting, it's over, right? Because he's gonna win. Now, I'll go with Will over Matthew Fitzpatrick, but I made the statement earlier in the year. I said I think Cameron Young will win before Will Zalatoris. Now, I was almost proved wrong at the PGA, but when I there was 2 guys coming into the season here that I thought would follow the Sam Burns track. Longer than average off the tee, great iron players, and they're going to have good putting weeks, right? You can look past the short game. Cameron Young was one of them. Mito Pereira was the other. Both coming off the nationwide. Mito won 3 times. Cam damn near won 3 times in a row. And it's like, okay, here's 2 guys, like 300 plus off the tee. They kind of keep it in front of them. And then their irons just go to work. Like their irons go to work. And then all of a sudden there's positive 4 putting, right? And like they're going to have a chance to win. And we almost saw it with Mito, and we've almost seen it now with Cameron Young. How about these last 3 events?
Wow.
3rd, 2nd, and 3rd. My goodness. Cameron Young, 40-1. I have to bet it. I have to bet it at 40-1. He's also there with Horschel at 40, Homa at 40, Mito's coming in at 45, Neiman at 45. And then you've got Adam Scott and Bradley at 50. Oh, I skipped over Sung Jae. He's in the field as well this week at 35. Sign me up for Cameron Young.
Look at the other events too. Like you referenced the top 3, but look early in the season, like second at the Riv. Like, these are big boy golf courses against elite fields. Like he came in and was just like, no, this is where I belong. It doesn't matter. We're not playing weak field events and putting those top 5s on the board against those types of crowds. I had him at 80. Southern Hills went really well. Had him at 80, and then had Zalatoris and JT. So like nice. It got to be a really nice. That's just. Yeah. I've been on the wrong side of playoff golf so many times, Travis, and then have that be the final was incredible. But yeah, there's no holes in Cam Young's game. He's also incredible around the green. Mm-hmm. Like we keep talking about these spike putting weeks. If these guys, these are the predictable skills, and then we let the variance play itself out. And if we get on the right side of it with these putting weeks, boom, these 40-1 winners are very easy to cash. So long and straight plays really well anywhere. And Cam Young seems to have that checked in spades. And even though we're looking at half the number he was a couple weeks ago at Southern Hills, 40 is still a great number. So anything at or above 40, I think he is in play. I took 2 shots here. Okay. I also bet on Homa. Again, we think of long straight. When we think of like Riv, I think of what we had at TPC Potomac a couple weeks ago, where you can get into that rough and it gets penal. Around the green for Homa can be a problem, but again, similar to the guys we talked about at the top of the board, it doesn't really matter if you're striping the irons and you keep finding the fairways. So my hope is that continues for Homa, who's another guy that he has that win equity, and I think he feels like he belongs in that top tier and is continuing to ascend and put himself in that spot. And I really like what we're seeing from Sanjay. I bet him at 40. I thought that was a really good number. I'm not surprised it moved to 35. Again, fairways. The short game has been a little rough, especially putting as of late. But again, as we've talked about, I'm kind of pulling that out for the most part. I think a guy will end up working towards his baseline. We want these spike weeks. Tee to green, Sanjay has been pretty terrific. Was really good last week at Colonial. So want to get on that number. And then I'm going to add Cam Young because I can't not. Like Cam Young and Will are just, those Wake Forest boys are just fun to watch. And I think you're going to be in the 20s for a very long time here. So when we can get 30s and 40s on them, we should take them.
I agree. It's like Cam's never played here before. So, not a lot of experience. I get that. But, again, Lingworth won here, McGirt won here. It's a different age with these guys coming in. So that doesn't scare me with Cameron Young and his skill set. I think you make a valid point. His short game is better than average as well. He's a real deal. I mean, Cameron Young is the real deal. And he's not afraid. None of these guys are afraid, but I think Cameron Young is like not afraid. That dude.
I think that there's difference though, right? There are like guys that feel like this is where I'm going.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm going there now. I'm not going there in a few years.
Yeah. He's confident. And, when Brooks Koepka shot the course record up there at Bethpage Black, he broke Cameron Young's course record as a junior golfer. Like, this dude's ready to go right now. So I like Cameron Young here at 40. And, I think it's interesting with Homa. I think that PGA championship was big for him. He needed to compete in a major championship.
Yep.
And he did there. He was 6th here last year. I think that's one that deserves a look here as well. And, Homa, he's got a little like that Patrick Reed in him when he gets near the lead. It puts you away. Like, you're going to have to go beat him.
Yep.
So I think that's another interesting one. I'm going to pass towards the bottom. A lot of heart for Mito last week to get into the top. I think he finished in the top 20. He ended up rallying, getting the top 20 last week. I'm sure he was exhausted after the PGA. Keegan Bradley's playing better. He's at 50. Corey Connors at 60. You probably worry a little bit about his short game here. Davis Riley, I think, is showing a lot of game as late at 60-1. Daniel Berger's game is going the other way. He's at 60. Seamus 60. Leishman. There's Reed at 65. I was talking with Josh Gregory, who coaches Patrick Reed. You got to listen to it. It's all launching on Thursday. And I asked him, I said, what Reed was working on in his swing when he went to Ledbetter and shutting that face more coming down, his speed went down off the tee and his short game started to go the other way. And I thought to myself, I was like, man, I don't know, like that, getting that club face more shut coming down, as good as Reed is, you start messing with that club face with better players, man, you're messing with the DNA. And I think it took a little bit. I think it set Reed back a little bit. I really do. And I think the last 2 weeks, he's kind of gotten back to his roots and he's now starting to move forward. I wouldn't be surprised to see Reed compete this week either.
Yeah, he was spraying off the tee for a solid couple months, and that was just, he didn't give himself a shot. And sometimes he's hard to handicap because, similar to how Cam Young used to get it done, and even like a Matthew Fitzpatrick, and before this year, there's just some magic beans to it where it's typically the least predictable, the least sticky skill set. It's the around the green stuff and the hot putting weeks. But yeah, he took himself out of it, and it's good to see what he's been doing of late. I think he puts himself back in the mix. I know some smart people that are on Reed this week at 65, which I get. That's a good number for Reed with the way he's trending. So betting long-term on that form and hoping that he has turned the corner, switch back to a different driver, and maybe he can get hot again and continue to keep himself in the fairway.
Yeah. 5th last year, 10th the year before. So he knows how to get around this place.
Yeah. These, tough tracks like the Farmers or stuff like that. He knows where he's at his best.
I've made that bet. So I'm on Reed at 65. Anybody else in there you like? I mean, Seamus Power obviously now is starting to elevate his name into the next level. Or Davis Riley, does he keep it going this week? Kuchar, he's won here, 75. His head's above water. He's playing some good golf. Perhaps a top 20 for Kuchar this week could be a relatively good play. It's not the same Tringali as we were seeing last year at 80, Alex Noren at 80, Abraham Answer at 80. I can't really wrap my arms around Abraham Answer either. That's one that I just can't get right.
No, and I thought last week was such a good place for him, and that the history is not great, but when you look at, if you're trying to like match a skill set to a course, it feels like Answer and Colonial like fit just with, fairway finders, and, when his irons were really good. We hadn't seen much from him, but the irons were really good at Southern Hills. So I thought maybe we were turning a corner, and he just couldn't get it done, and, missed the cut on the number, I think, and not a great week for him. So yeah, he's off the board. So my next guy that I can't get off of, this is my bad Willie Z, I would say, which is not fair to this young guy. I'm so pot committed, Travis, to Aaron Wise. I just bet him every week blindly. I want to buy into the skill sets. I know the putting is very similar. We get into these issues with Aaron with the putting, but again, the tee to green skill set long-term is something I really want to buy into, and he's been better of late. And again, anytime he's anytime he's 80, especially in a deep field like this. I think he's going to win the Memorial in this type of field? No. I'm just pot committed because I can't have him on Sunday be in the mix, and I have no pre-tournament Aaron Wise. It's more of a brand thing for me at this point, unfortunately. But I just want to continue to buy in him long-term because I think that there's a lot of skill there.
He's 9th last year.
Yeah. See, here we go.
And he putted well. So that's all you need to hear, right?
That's all we need to hear. Because Tita Greeny's been pretty good. When you look at he checks a lot of the boxes. It's really just the putting when you look at kind of the big bright marks on his recent form. So, strokes gained approach, I have him 10th in the last 50 rounds in this field. Like, that's really good. Yep. Really good from the key proximity of 175 to 200. He's in the top 20 there. So, we're going to have some long par threes. I have him 8th in proximity over 200 yards. So, like, these are the skill sets that I think are sticky and predictable. And if we can get some of the other things that are more variant going our way, Aaron Wise is a look that I make pretty much every week.
His putting's trending too. We talk about Will Zalatoris. I think you put Aaron Wise in that. His putter is getting better. He went back to that long putter that he had a lot of success with in college. And 3 of his last 4 events, he's been positive in strokes gained putting, including positive 4.9 at the PGA. So that had to feel good. The last time we see him, he was just under 5 positive. He had to feel like, wow, can I do that again? Right.
Yeah.
If he does that again here with those skill sets that you're talking about, he will be in the top 20.
Yep. So he's probably, for the listeners, maybe not wise to tail the Wise outright, but a finishing position bet's probably a better look.
Interesting group here. I need to spend a little more time, I think, right through here. I was trying to pull up Davis Riley here real quick. And Davis Riley and Aaron Wise have the same full swing coach, Jeff Smith. And you look at Riley, you've got 4 top 13 finishes in the last 4 weeks and an approach game that is really improving. I mean, big time games here for Davis Riley. Last 2 weeks, positive 6.4 and 7.7. A guy that normally off the tee will keep it in front of him. I think you're seeing really some improvement here with the iron game. I think he's a better than average short game player. And he's put together some good putting weeks as well. And a couple of those spikes that I really like to see. I love to see the positive 6-7 once in a while, just jump in there. Yeah, Davis Riley is an up and comer. I talked about him a lot earlier in this year. I know his coach really well. And I was up at Hilton Head and I was watching him hit balls. And I've always said to people, look, when Davis Riley has an absolute terrific golf swing. And going into the season, you look at him statistically and you kind of watch how he was going along. You're like, man, those stats don't match what I'm looking at.
It's almost like it's like a cookie cutter swing. Like if you could say, it is as pure as could be. There is no wasted motion in it. It's a beautiful swing.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And in that week that I sat there and watched him for like a half hour, he lost 7.4 approach. And I remember I'm thinking these stats coming in, -2, -1, negative. Man, what am I watching? And then since that time, in the last 3 weeks, just a damn heater. I don't know.
Yeah, he's been dialed in.
He's dialed in.
Yeah, that's the problem, is that the number for me is just a little too short in comparison to the guys around him. But again, maybe we just, form is fickle and we don't know when it starts or ends, but he's definitely in whatever form is right now. So, you might be paying a little bit of a shorter number, but again, do you want to be betting him at, 80 when he's out of form? I'd probably rather take him, in the 40, 50 range when he is in form. So you can definitely make a case that you want to just continue to bank on his recent form and his iron play, which has been that's what matters here, right, Travis? We talked about at the top, that's what we want to dial in on. So that's the most predictable skill set, and he's got it in spades right now.
Yep. So Berger, he's kind of lost the putter a little bit. He just doesn't look. He's not the same version of himself right now. There's something going on with Berger. I don't know if it's injury related or what, but the putter has been chilly.
Yeah. It's tough for me too, because I'm a Berger guy. I love, especially down the board like this. But I think there's something there. It's just not it's not enticing enough for me to pay the price for it.
So how far can we stretch it? Siwoo 80, Ryan Palmer 80. I've won some money on Chris Kirk this year. My goodness, has he been good to me?
So yeah, you mentioned actually my only bomb, and I got him at 125.
Okay,
was Siwoo.
Siwoo. Okay, you got him at 125.
125, wow. And yeah, I mean, look, if you want to play into course history, just back-to-back T18s here. I think he had an 18 and a 9th last year. Again, like if you look at the statistics, the putter can be all over the place. But we do have these weeks where he'll gain 4 to 5. The approach play is really nice. He is accurate off the tee. He can turn up the distance when he needs to. He seems to like this place. He can navigate around the green too. So again, if I'm just looking at strokes gained tee to green and some ball striking stuff, I think Siwoo makes a ton of sense. And part of it was just an egregious number at 125. So I have no problem with the finishing position bet for him. Now that, that's kind of back down to the 80 range. I just think he seems to like this place. And Siwoo seems to be a guy that maybe has courses. We talk about that with Bubba a lot. They're just, Bubba tracks. And maybe Siwoo tends to be a guy here in this next swing that just has these courses that fit his eye and he shows up well, no matter the form. Because the form hasn't been great. I mean, not great at Byron Nelson, T60, mostly due to the putter at Southern Hills. But again, he gained like almost 6 on approach, and he was great around the green there too. So Siwoo is a great finishing position bet.
Yeah, 125. That's a no-brainer on Siwoo. Yeah. Ryan Palmer, I mentioned 80. Chris Kirk playing good golf right now, really good golf.
He's so solid.
Yeah. He's really played well. I mean, there's Ricky at 100. He's, historically old Ricky. He's played well here.
Yeah.
But
it looks to be better. Like, I don't know that he's bettable for me, but like we seem to be turning at least a little bit of a corner. I don't know. It's tough.
Make the cut, Ricky, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of where we're at.
If you want to tell yourself a story down the board, I think it gets really hard. Again,
Bryce 100. Wow.
I know those numbers just jump out. You're like, well, what do I do with Bryson if he's, if he commits? But Keith Mitchell is a guy that I think I want to buy into a little bit long term. I didn't bet him. Really good par 5 score. Again, if he can, manage the blow up numbers, I think Keith is interesting. For me though, I'm going to stick with the Siwoo bomb and maybe add to the top of the board because I just don't know that there's a lot of actual win equity. This field is so strong. Even the middle tier is so strong.
Yeah, I just like I'm having a hard time convincing myself top 20 as I kind of get down here, into this group. I don't think you can go much lower. At least I can. I mean, I know there's been a couple bombs that have won. I was on Stuart Sink last week. I thought he was. Same. Were you?
Yeah.
He was cruising, and then he went double.
Yeah.
When's the last time he's made back-to-back double bogeys?
No, I was on him. I thought it was actually a great play too because I thought it was such a bad number on him because he does seem to be over the last handful of years. He also hits it a lot further than people think because he's old, but he's still bombing. People think he's not that much older than me, but I could sit here on the podcast and call him old. But yeah, I mean, he tends to be a guy that just finds these short little bursts of form. Like when we saw, great Masters and then goes and wins the next week at, the Heritage. So like we've seen these weeks and I thought he was a great play last week. So yeah, you can see these guys, like you mentioned, Cooch that can, hang back, just find fairways, take, lay back on the par 5s and then just put themselves in spots to make birdies on those. So those guys can play here.
Absolutely. Yeah. The plotter can play. Like you don't have to, that's a good point. You don't have to overpower this place. But I do think you made a good point on the fade, on the high fade.
Yep.
I do think that the cush around the greens, guys are going to have to go throw the ball up in the air around the greens here. That low skipper, one hop stop, you're not going to see a lot of that here. You mentioned the bunkers. They're deep bunkers too. Really, really deep bunkers. You got to really throw the ball up. So when you think of short game around the greens here, I think of guys that are this way, not that flatter type of trajectory, bring it in, and they're more comfortable with that shot. Now, some guys can do it all. Others favor one or the other. You mentioned also strokes gained par 4. I was looking at last 50 rounds, and we'll kind of finish up with this. Cameron Young's number 1. Rory, Rahm, Cameron Smith, Brian Harmon kind of pops a little bit on some of these things that I'm running. Hovland, Lowry, you mentioned Mito Pereira, Sungjae, Xander, just kind of going down the top 10 from a strokes gained par 4. A lot of 450 plus par 4s. Guys taking care of the par 5s. Bryson, no surprise. Cantley takes care of par 5s. Cameron Smith takes care. There's Fitzpatrick, Homa. Wow, Harris English. What is he, 180 to 1? What a difference a year makes for that guy. A little injury related there, too.
Yeah. Is he even playing?
Yeah, Harris is in the field. Yep.
Jeez. Okay.
He is right now.
Yeah.
Rory. Man, I kind of, Rory's.
Yeah. So for me, if I was going the top of the board ish, it's probably Rory. But again, it's a short number. For me, having a couple in the 20s and then a couple 40s with the Sungjae and Homa, it's just a tough range for me to get back into. But I'd almost rather take a couple shots and add like a Zalatoris and Young versus Rory.
Feels like
Zalatoris comes down to me.
Feels like Zalatoris going to get his first win this week.
I like that. I like the mojo there, Travis. I like it. You're talking to the coach. There's some good juju here with Willie Z.
I think it's right. It feels like it's happened that way on the podcast before. That's kind of how we do it. We like to, you got the player on Wednesday, you got the coach on Thursday, and I think the mojo's coming. And I got good mojo from Gregory too. Like, yeah, it's getting better, man. It's getting better. It's going to happen. So, and how mature is Will Zalatoris? I mean, are you kidding me? You got on one hand, you got Patton Kazire bitching about everything about the course and this and that and blah, right? It's like, you can't win major championships like that, man. You can't have that attitude. You can't. And then you got Willie Z out there just like a bulldog, and the final round hits it over the green. He's got to take a drop onto the cart path. And he's like, okay, gets it up and down. It's like, what?
Such a boss. Yeah.
What? And the kid is real. I mean, he is a tough competitor and he's got a great attitude. So, all right, I'm betting Willie Z too. Damn it.
Even the way he handled the stuff at the Farmers, right? Like, I mean, gosh, I mean, that had to have been so hard to have that. And then, these guys have to go and answer questions after and do the media stuff. And it's like, I don't know, you could see a little bit, I think, in those moments of who they are. Yeah. And then be okay if some of that were to drip in there a little bit and, shown that vulnerability or, to be really pissed about it. I'm sure he was because he's a competitor, but yeah, I mean, those things, same thing with Mito a couple weeks ago at Southern Hills. Like, you just love to see that, the ability to kind of just rally and have that right mindset, because it matters more than any sport. I think having between your ears dialed in, it is such a difficult game. Even if you're striking it well, the ball might not be where you wanted it to be or where you think you should have been. And you just have to continue to hit the next shot. So I think it really matters what's going on between the ears. And he seems to have it, which is exciting.
Yep, he does have it. And I think I've added him to the card. And so as far as down to that, I went Reed at 65. That's as far as I'm going.
Yeah, I like Reed. I like it. I think I'll probably put him in a finishing position bet.
Yeah. All right. There you have it. Memorial, Ryan Noonan. I know you got your own show coming up. Tell my audience about it.
Yeah, betspurtsgolf.com. You can actually find BetSpurts on the YouTube page. We have a betting show on Tuesday mornings. We have DFS if you are playing on DraftKings or FanDuel on Tuesday afternoon. Lots of free content over there as well. We currently, because we're actually launching new tools, we're 50% off for the year. It's just $99 for all the cool tools and content we have over at betspurtsgolf.com.
Awesome. Appreciate you coming on, man. Stripe Show Podcast. Best of luck this week.